Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Service Transformation Workstream. We'll start very, very soon. We're just probably waiting for a few late stragglers to come back from lunch, and then we'll get going. I'm Richard Foy. Here we go. Let's get the slide thing going. I'm Richard Foy. I'm the General Manager for Digital Transformation at Department of Internal Affairs. And it's really my pleasure and privilege this afternoon to chair this work stream. It's a work stream which we're going to really, I guess, bring together some of the ideas that have been talked about earlier this morning by some of our speakers, looking at these ideas of identity, privacy, and services, and really trying to understand the relationship and, I guess, the convergence of those three things into this idea that we call service transformation. And I think for those of you that were able to make it here this morning and listen to the minister's speech, listen to John Edwards, then to Malcolm and to Doc, you would have really got a great sense that this whole idea of identity and digital identity is hugely not just complicated, but very, very complex, rooted in some very sort of arcane rules and regulations and social conventions about how we identify ourselves, and now in the digital environment, made much more complex as we try to piece together our identities through, pieces and fragments of data which are sometimes very ephemeral. I think you also would have heard, especially from Doc, when he talked about vendor relationship management, and from Malcolm when we think about the privacy implications of identity in a digital and connected world, that identity is an extraordinarily deeply, deeply personal idea that affects each of us. And in fact, it's something that, when you get it right, can connect us back to our histories, to our time, back in time to our very origins as people. And so I'm just going to do a bit of scene setting before I introduce my speakers. Actually, Aaron, you're good. And I'm going to start off really by, exploring this notion of identity and what it means for us. Because I think when the human condition requires us often to ask that question of who am I, where have I come from, and how did I get here? And it's sort of in the modern era, I'd probably just Google that. I'd Google, my name, and I'd look at who I was. I've decided to go a little bit old school, so who am I? If there are any Unix geeks, Unix heads in here, you'll recognize this is actually not just a question, it's actually imperative in Unix to inquire from the system, who am I? So if I actually do that, and I look at who am I, what does it tell me? Actually nothing very useful. It just tells me that I'm Richard Foy. Because my little Unix system only knows who I am within the very, very narrow context that it's been set up with. And when I sort of did this, I kind of realized that, I am more than a user ID. I'm also a lot more than all the emails that go through my Gmail account, more than the videos that upload to my YouTube channel. Certainly a lot more than all the things that I've liked and favorited and that I've posted to my Facebook timeline. Certainly more than the sum total of all the little tweets that I've done in my Twitter stream. And a heck of a lot more than my little professional relationships that I have within LinkedIn. And dare I say it, I am more than my real me identity. I probably shouldn't say that, but it's definitely true. So for me, when I was asking myself, who am I? A lot of it comes down to the history of who I am. And, I'm the biological product of Charles and Jean Foy. I'm the fourth born of four sons that they had. My father, he passed away in 2008. And that was actually a moment when I was actually able to look into some of the secrets and some of the truth around my identity, which has actually brought me here. So, as usual, when you go through the artifacts and belongings of your dearly past parents, you sometimes come across some very interesting artifacts. So here is my father's Chinese passport. This is the passport that he had issued in mainland China. And it's a lovely fabric little booklet that's starting to fray at the edges, made with real fabric. And whilst a lot of people look at things like that to find out where their parents have travelled, how did they get here? I was particularly interested not in that, but in this page, which actually has the details of my father's identity. And in fact, I was probably most intrigued really to look at this bit here, which states his name. And the Chinese bit is Wang Hinfeng or Wang Hinfeng. The English thing there is Charlie Cao Foy. And what particularly interested me was the fact that it said Foy, because I don't know about you, but Foy is not a very Chinesey name. So for my entire life, I have wondered about why Foy? Nothing in my father's Chinese name could possibly be transliterated into Foy. It can't be bastardized into that. So it's been a real, it's absolutely been a real mystery to me, one that has never been solved by talking to my father when he was alive, because he simply wouldn't talk about it, and something that my mother and my brothers didn't know. A few years ago, I thought Foy might have something to do with this Foy here. This is one of the most notable Foys. There was an action in World War II in 1944. Foy is a small town in Belgium, very close to another town called Bastogne. And some of you, if you know World War II history, may know about the Battle of the Bulge. And that was particularly made famous in the television show Band of Brothers and Easy Company. So for some time, I entertained really romantic notions that maybe I had ancestors, some of my forebears fought for the 101st Airborne Easy Company in the Battle of the Bulge. Or maybe that my forebears were Belgian farmers, peasants, who were liberated from the Nazis by the Americans. Yeah, I doubt it. I doubt it. As these things happen, history manages to catch up with itself. And since my father died in 2008, my three brothers and I, we do something annually that we call the Foy Boy Weekend, where we travel around and we just spend a weekend together. When we're in Auckland, we've always made a habit of going to my grandfather's plot. This is his grave plot, and it's in a cemetery. We've very, very carefully made sure that we went to the right place. We've taken photos of this. We've got the GPS coordinates of it, so we always know that we go back to the right place. And I'll just highlight for you one of the symbols at the top there, which you'll see repeated in my father's Chinese name, and that's Wong. That's the family name. And that's all good, because for the last 8 years since my father passed away, we have been going to Auckland and tending to my grandfather's plot, since no one else was going to do that. Last year, when we did that, I decided to just have a look around some of the other plots nearby, because I never do that. And I came across this one, which also had the symbol of Wong. Not unusual. Wong's a pretty common name, a little bit like chins, you know. I won't go into that funny joke. I don't want to offend Chinese people or people with multiple chins. But I noticed this, and this rather startled me. Wong Cao Foy, which you might recall is written in my father's Chinese passport. So of course, there was much freaking out at this point, because I thought, we've been cleaning the wrong grave for the last 8 years. What is going on? Of course, my older brothers, being older and wiser, assured me that we had indeed been tending to the right graveyard plot for my grandfather, because my mother had told us that that was the right one. Other relatives had convinced us that was the right one. But I could not get past this notion that Cao Foy, there was just too much of a coincidence. And as it turns out, when I have a look at, actually I'll zoom in, I'll do a bit of CSI enhancement here. When you have a look at my father's passport, you'll notice that little parts of that seem to be a bit more scratched out than others. Little white bits scratched out there and scratched out there. And we learned that Wong Cao Foy, he had a pretty lucrative little side business where he would sell his name to people coming into the country, and they would use that. And that is what appears to have happened, and why I bear the surname Foy. It was not only profitable, it was obviously extremely successful, because it fooled the New Zealand government, because my father's certificate of registration and this is what he would have used to enter into the country and become, I guess, well, you'll see there, the Aliens Act of 1948. So my father used to be an alien. That explains a lot. But issued in 1948 or 1950, when this was issued, under the name Charles Foy. So it was good enough to get him registered as a legal alien. And it was also good enough to allow him to get citizenship under the name Charles Foy. It was also good enough to get him a passport issued the year later after getting citizenship. And clearly it was good enough to pass along to his 4 sons, my 3 older brothers, and then myself. Which really, I guess, just brings me to kind of a conclusion here, which is, does it matter? Because, where I started at the beginning, our identities can root us and take us back to our histories and to our origins. And for me, it was a mystery and now a secret that I know the truth of, but it doesn't change the person that I am. Because who am I? I'm certainly more than a user ID, but I'm also a lot more than a name. And some of you know who I am, and I'm still sure that you'll call me Foy Boy, and that's perfectly okay. So identity is more than just complex. It's more than just personal. Identity is also very messy. And so today we're going to talk about identity, the privacy, and how that might be both an enabler for transformational services and a critical prerequisite, but maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's something that can actually fundamentally change the way in which we offer services to New Zealanders or to our customers and the public. So